So, okay, I'll introduce Mr. Mukul Deora and Mr. A.D. Singh. So, Mr. Mukul Deora, he's a serial entrepreneur in packaging technology, digital content storage, workspace development, and film production and distribution. He's also a startup investor. He is the producer of Oscar and BAFTA nominated global hit film The White Tiger. I think this deserves an applause. Yep, of course. He's also a multimedia artist who has performed at TED India, the Tate Modern, and the Serpentine Gallery. With him, the person who will be moderating the session is Mr. A.D. Singh. I asked him how should I introduce him. He said just keep it brief. सूरज को चिराग दिखाने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. So he said, just introduce me as he's the founder and CEO of Olive Restaurant Group. So a big round of applause to both of them. I welcome both of you on the stage, please. And better half of Mr. Mukul is also here. So please give her also a big round of applause.
That's a good one.
Okay.
She's never going to come again. She's very stage shy. But sure.
I saw him. I knew then this was the master for me. I want to be a driver for your son.
Hey, how much rope?
Hey, don't do that.
Hey, driver!
I'm Pinky. Nice to meet you.
Balram, have you ever seen a computer?
We had many of them in the village with the goats.
The goats are pretty advanced to use computer.
Okay, now you're being a jerk.
I didn't like the way he had spoken about me. Since I was a boy, the desire to be a servant had been hammered into my skull. I, Balram Halwai, I drove the car. I was alone in the car. They made me sign that confession.
Why would you kick him? Why would you hit him like that?
You're my driver!
I want to break free. I want to break free.
They had plans. I had plans too.
I want to break free from your lies. You're so self-satisfied. I don't need.
I would have to become the creature that gets born only once every generation.
The white tiger.
That's what I call myself these days. I'm just one who has woken up while the rest of you are still sleeping.
Wow, memories, huh? I was just seeing that and remembering pre-lockdown we shot the whole thing. Quite amazing, yeah.
The White Tiger was a phenomenon. I hope many of you saw it. The numbers were staggering. 27 million households saw it in the first month, which is about 60 million saw it over its time. It was #1 in 65 countries in the world. Oscar nominated, 2 BAFTA nominations on top of that. I have to say, I've known Mukul a long time. Well,
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a massive team effort. I'm just honestly, but yeah, thanks.
So I've known Mukul a long time. I'd read the book, and to be honest, I didn't love it. And when Mukul told me he wanted to make a movie of it, I was hoping it would be forgotten and would never come to pass. I was worried about him. I gently tried to dissuade him a few times. So
This is true. He actually told me a couple of times, buddy, why are you doing this? Why are you spending so much time and effort and yeah.
So Mukul, tell us why you picked this book. Why did it resonate with you? What was on your mind at that time?
I remember reading the book. I was on a flight. I was going to London, and I was a voracious reader as a kid, but I hadn't read a good fiction. I was reading more non-fiction. I still read more non-fiction. And someone recommended it to me, and I read it, and I couldn't put it down. I finished. It's a very quick book. I finished it in 3 days, basically. I read 1/3 on the flight, and the rest. First thing was my reaction. It made me laugh. It made me cry. I cried at the end of the book, but I laughed out loud at various points as well, and I was just like, blown away by. I don't know if you've all read the book. We had some things of the book in the movie, but what Arvind Adiga does, the genius of Arvind Adiga, is the concepts that he comes out with. For example, he talks about a half-baked man. So the driver is saying, "My master, Your Excellency, my master called me a half-baked man because I'm illiterate, but all my knowledge has come from newspapers, bhel puri packets, like lizards dropping from ceilings. Knowledge came into my head. So I am a half-baked man." And then he goes on to say, "But half-baked men like me become entrepreneurs, while fully baked men go and work for someone else." So this is one example of a concept that he had, a half-baked man. And the second example was the key concept in the book, which also ties a little bit to what Deepak was talking about as well, which is, he calls it the rooster coop in the movie and in the book. And he says that we all are trapped in a rooster coop that we can't escape. He talks about roosters in a giant cage, and someone keeps coming to kill them, but they can't escape. They know what's happening. They know that they're going to die, but they can't get out of it. And then you have to become the white tiger, basically. So I just loved the book. And of course, I knew at the time it had already been a big book. It had won the Booker Prize. It had sold 4 million copies worldwide. I found that a little later. It's very hard to find out the exact number of copies sold. You have to talk to 20 publishers and all, but I knew it was a big book. And it was very cinematic in my head. I love Delhi as well, and I could just see it as a movie. And I know that everyone says you can see this as a movie, but yeah, I could really see it as a movie, and I was like, I would like to make this into something international as well. Was interesting for me because this book was something that had resonated with the world. It wasn't an Indian story only. It was a global story. So I think that was interesting as well. Yeah.
So Mukul, this was a famous book by that time you began. Would you take our audience through what were the challenges to adapt a famous book, a popular book, to a movie?
Oh, sure. Well, in the beginning, it was very simple. Nobody wanted to make it. Literally nobody wanted to make it. Also, the book was an incredible book. For me, I was obsessed by the book. I knew it by heart. I'd read it many, many times. And I wanted to do justice to the book. And for me, justice meant showing it to a global audience, which includes India, but it was not only India. It was very clear in my head from the beginning that I had to set it up on a global level. It wasn't only going to be an Indian story. Basically, it comes to, and this was something I did through the whole movie process, which was many years, because you have to develop, first you have to find the right team, then you have to develop the script, then you have to start shooting, edit, and release. So it's like 3, 4, 5 years. That's how long it can take, 5 years in this case. So I had a mantra in my head that I created, and I kept saying it. It wasn't in Sanskrit or anything like that. It was basically that this is a universal story that happens to be set in India. That's what I kept telling myself. It happens to be set in India. And that really helped me through the process. Look, the book sold 4 million copies worldwide. It sold maybe a few 100,000 in India. So 90% of its audience was global. I had to find that middle ground to make sure it hit all those people and people in India by repeating this mantra at all points through the journey, basically. Taking all the decisions at all the decision-making points. This was what kept me, on course, basically, because it was very hard to make it. Yeah, to say, to your point, if I wanted to set it up in an Indian context, it would have been much easier, but I didn't want to do that. I went to LA. I spent a lot of time in LA. I think that's when AD was like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time in LA. And I was just some guy, like you read about running around with a book. You know what I mean? Like, here's my book. Like some madman. And no one wanted to make it. Like, no one in LA wanted to make it. It's hard to imagine now because you see you see a movie. A movie is like a 3D. It's like a building. It's like this auditorium. It's a 3D space. But a book with an idea with some guy running around is nothing. There's no Priyanka Chopra. There's no Rajkumar Rao. There's nothing there. You know what I mean? There's no Ramin. So it was very, very hard. Trying to make it. Yeah, in the beginning. Yeah.
So interestingly, when I was talking with Mukul to prepare for this, he shared that Arvind Adiga called him at one point. It was very unusual and said to him that you really made a very good movie. It was better than the book. That's very rare for any author to think that. And fantastic job.
Yeah, that's true. He called me a few months ago to say that. And I told him straight away that I don't agree with you. I'm sorry. That the book is much better. Which A, I believe for sure, and B, anyway, it's very hard because I was part of the movie making process. So when you're part of making something, you don't really have an objective view on it at all. The same way as he didn't see the movie till it was released. He put it on Netflix and he saw the movie. So he just saw this movie, like I read the book. Yeah. But I'm happy that he thought that, and I hope he continues to think that. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, Mukul, I'm in the restaurant business, and I'm sure many of you are good cooks or have lots of passion for the food industry. I meet people all the time who, would love to get into restauranting. But from an idea to making a restaurant, a successful restaurant, I know that journey, and it's very difficult. But I can't imagine, Mukul, from a good book to making a movie real like you did. How did you do it? What were some of the steps? I'm sure that'd be of interest for everybody.
I mean, it's a Ramayana. We always used to joke. Ramin, the director, and me used to always joke, and my wife and me, who's been my long-suffering companion through this, that we could easily make a movie on the making of the movie. Honestly, we could make 2 movies. We could make one movie on starting making the movie, which is one thing in itself, and the second is actually making the movie, because they both were. So I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but I mean, I've been a creative person most of my life. So in any creative process, you really start with an idea that you have, which in this case was trying to make a movie out of this book. And in the beginning, it's very lonely and you have to get used to that, I think, because creativity, I mean, unless you're in a band, when I see the Rolling Stones or Coldplay, I'm envious of them because they are these, they have ups and downs, but they're like these brothers, they've been brothers for 20 years, and what an amazing thing. I haven't had that luck, unfortunately, or fortunately, but so you just have to spend a lot of time, researching. I spend a lot of time thinking, reading, meeting people, not so much meeting people, I'm working on that, but and just seeing what is the best way to do this. And there was no real roadmap for this because people from India don't go and make international films. They don't go to America and try to work with Netflix America or anything, or get an American director or whatever. They don't do that. I mean, I don't think. Netflix told me this. I don't know if it's true. They said nobody's done that, but yeah, maybe I'm sure someone has. But so just have to be very focused on what your goal is and believing in something insane to most people. I chose Netflix at the time, which was about 7-8 years ago. It wasn't an obvious choice. Like today, Netflix is, it's there. But about 8 years ago, when I had a choice between two people, and I chose Netflix because there was a few reasons. One was, again, this was Netflix America. I think they had one employee in India. They were just starting up in India. But I knew they had big plans for India and for the world at the time. At that point, again, it was just me and the book. So it was a very small project, with grand dreams, but a small, what was it? It was nothing. And it wasn't a Tom Cruise movie. It wasn't a $200 million movie. And I knew that in India, because I distributed a bunch of movies before, that in India, if you want to have a movie that you want people to see in the theaters, it can't be this kind of movie. People are not going to see this kind of movie in the theaters. And even though Netflix didn't exist in India yet, that was a call that I took, that is one way that I can ensure that my little baby goes, to everyone's homes in India and in the world. So that was one very important thought for me when I, was thinking of Netflix, basically. Also, I did a lot of research, of course, and found that they had an incredible creative team, and they really did, to help us along the way. I met a bunch of directors, writers. LA, I was nobody there, so really tough to, get into the system. It's all about a system, you're breaking into like Hollywood, basically. For people to trust you, know that you can deliver, know anything. I mean, you're just some guy who has the rights to the book. So it took some time to do that, met a bunch of directors, and I realized that movie making is war, basically. It's like, we talk about startups. Everyone knows about startups now. So an interesting analogy, I was talking to someone yesterday, a CFO of a startup, and it's like a startup, but with an insanely condensed time frame. Because in a movie, you have a couple of years of development, but then when you greenlight production, from being 3 people, me, the director, and the writer, or in this case, me and the director, you suddenly, in 3 months, have to ramp up to 300 people, which is the whole team that you have, along with stars, Priyanka had to come from America, unbelievable logistics. Our camera crew was Italian, editor was from New York, so a crazy logistical situation with real-time shooting in Delhi. It's like running a startup, on the roads of Delhi with permissions, with days, with insane costs. So, it's a whole different thing. And you're building a company where people come together for 3 months to make something and then go. And then again, it's just Ramin, me, and the editor sitting again, back to square one, sitting in a room and thinking, oh, what do we do, blah, 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 for another 6 months of editing, basically, and then the movie's ready. That's really what it is. So it's an accelerated startup, basically. Yeah.
So, Mukul,
I was saying something, but I can't remember what it was.
I'm going to try and get you back to that. But very interestingly, this Ramin that Mukul's mentioning was the director of the movie. This book by Arvind Adiga was dedicated to Ramin.
That's true. Sorry, that's what
Yeah.
I exactly. Thank you for getting me back on track in many ways. I met a bunch of directors, and I like, film is war. That's what I was saying. Film is war, and I realized that I needed someone who, like me, would give his right arm to make the movie. And I met Ramin. 2 things. One is the book was dedicated to him. The first page of the book says to Ramin Bahraini, because he was, and he still is, best friends with Arvind Adiga. They were in college together. So I met someone who knew the book as well as me. And we always joke about who knew the book better. He had read drafts of the book before it came out. So that was done. And because he knew Arvind when Arvind was writing the book. And he's a filmmaker, an acclaimed filmmaker in New York. So it was his very deep dream. I don't want to say too much because I'm going to share this video with him, and I don't know how he'll react to me talking about his dreams. Hi, Ramin. It was to make this movie, So it was like I took years and years of my struggle to come to a place to be able to make it. And Ramin, in his own way, was honing his skill to be able to make the movie, to be in a place where we could come together, and the powers that be, which in this case was Netflix, would give us the millions of dollars that you need, the marketing muscle, everything, the whole thing, to get this thing together. Because, yeah, that's how films are. Everything has to come together. Then from thin air, momentum suddenly happens, and then it happens, yeah.
So, Mukul, I'm sure we're all wondering, because any lucky breaks? Was Ramin a lucky break that helped make everything happen?
Since I'm going to send it to him, yes, he was a very lucky break. I mean, for both of us, it was an amazing thing, because he really wanted to make it, and I also really wanted to make it. So, I mean, we're all fortunate about it. I think any movie, so many movies do well and so many movies don't do well. So it's such a, you don't even hear about 90%, which is, it's a sad fact of life. So, but any movie coming together is more than a lucky break, it's a miracle. A movie coming together in this way to get the financing, to get everything together, the parts, the star, is a miracle, actually. So, more than a lucky break, I would say it was a nice, happy miracle for everyone. Yeah, I mean, were there any lucky breaks? I just don't think in that way, I guess, of lucky breaks. I think of hard work, and something happens, and hard work, unfortunately or fortunately, that's
Got it.
That's my life basically. Hard work, something happens, and some things don't happen also. But usually, if you work hard, as Deepak said, something happens.
So I'm definitely, when we finish, we're going to give everybody a few minutes because I'm sure listening to Mukul, he must have many questions, things he's having to rush over. I'll just cover a couple more points and then open it up to all of you. In the movie Mukul, you talked about 3 types of Indians. It was a very core part, I think, of your vision in the movie.
Yes.
You shared that a bit.
Sure. You know what? And I'll just bring it back to the challenge of making, because I think that would be interesting also, of making a global film. Because you know the accents, for example. We had to make a movie where Balram's accent has to be authentic, so everyone here says that's a real person. That's not some random nonsense that someone has conjured up. But at the same time, someone in Texas can understand it without subtitles to some level. The clothing, every little nuance of all the characters, especially for us in India, because we all know, like we said, the 3 Indians. We all know an Indian like Pinky Madam, played by Priyanka. Someone who's not really Indian, she's she's from abroad, she's from the US or whatever. She comes to India, she is an alien really to the system and to the culture. And she's always like, oh my God, what's going on? Oh my God, what's going on? Yep. But in this case, she is the agent of change. Because she's outside the system, which we're talking about and we're trying to break, she's the person who's like, Balram, you can't do this. What is this? This is bullshit. This is bullshit. So she's the agent of change. Ashok, played by Rajkumar, is another Indian who we all know as well. Not an ABCD. The first one would be an ABCD, right? He's the Indian like me. In fact, Rajkumar told me that Ramin used to keep telling him to watch me. And there's a scene in the movie which we cut, where Rajkumar's character and Adarsh's character are singing a song together, and Rajkumar says, I only wanted to make music, which is unfortunately or fortunately inspired by me. But it was cut for better or worse from the movie. Very nice scene though. They jam in his like just vocally jam, and they both are very good singers, interestingly. So there's this other Indian as well. And there's the third Indian, which is Balram, which everybody knows as well. So it's really about the 3 Indians, the India basically that these 3 Indians represent, and how to make sure that people understand them here. Of course, they have to be authentic and globally as well. So that was a massive challenge, honestly, through the whole process. And language as well. The accents. We had accent coaches for everyone, except Pinky Madam. We had accent coach for Rajkumar. We had an accent coach for Balram, because from a specific area of India, we wanted to place that correctly. But again, neutralize it, but not too much. That whole thing, yeah.
The balance.
The balance, like I was on set every day, the whole day, making sure, all that was proper, and because, Ramin doesn't speak Hindi, so, you have to manage the whole thing, and so it's really a deep collaboration with Ramin and me, to get this going, So
Mukul, it's a little confusing for all of us, I'm sure, when we look at movie titles and we see producer, executive producer, director. What the heck does an executive producer do? I know when I watched it, it said, Mukul, you're a PGA, which is some sort of producer guild, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
What exactly did you do? Or roughly?
Sure. Producers, there are many types of producers. That's a whole thing. There's executive, blah, blah. The person who does all the work and the best way to describe it is who is the person who goes to the Oscars or to the BAFTAs if you get nominated, and that is the producer. Not the executive producer, not the associate producer, blah, blah, blah. So that's the person who does everything, basically. That's the producer. And there can be more than one producer in a movie. In this movie, I was the only producer, along with Ramin, the director. It says, if you see the movie, it says Mukul, Deora, PGA. PGA is the Producers Guild of America, which is a very distinguished body. I'm not a member of it because I'm not an American citizen, but for any movie to be, I think it's because of potentially getting Oscar nominated, and when you're in the whole awards race, they have a vetting process where you and the team vet what you have contributed to the movie, and only then you get awarded that mark. So it's a. I guess I didn't even know what it was, but everybody at Netflix was like, congratulations, and I was like, did we win something? But yeah.
So along the journey, again, one day I met Mukul and he said he had an eye on the Oscars. This was while the movie was, I think, very early days of being made. And it's the first time I thought to myself that I never thought of him as a bullshit artist before. But I was like, what?
Yeah.
From running around with a, a vision in your mind to an eye on the Oscars. How did you try and achieve it? Tell us.
No, it's true. All my good friends know that I used to keep saying that I want this movie to be Oscar nominated, and that was my goal. And there is a friend of mine in CA, David Tagioff, who laughed and told me, I forgot what he said. He said, you were annoyingly prescient about your the way you did it. And I said, well, I guess that's a compliment, thank you. I did have the Oscars in my mind. I was disappointed because honestly, I wanted a Best Picture Oscar nomination, which means it's the highest level, and I wanted a Best Actor as well, and Ramin wanted a Best Director, obviously. But I mean, even before I met Ramin, and the reason that didn't happen, I blame COVID. But so I was very focused on. I mean, the beauty of the Academy is on some level that they really recognize, very high quality. It's not a commercial thing. It's really about quality. Again, it really comes down to choosing the best team, the best partners. I would say it is a little bit of luck as well. I mean, once you understand how it works, there's so many good movies being made as well. But this is, I think, one of those cases where you had an insane dream, and part of it happened, basically, yeah.
It's lovely, but, Mukul released the movie during the lockdown. He and Natasha were actually living, I think, a couple of miles from here at that time.
That's true.
And, to release a movie on this scale, on this level, worldwide, get this sort of respect, adulation, viewership. How did you manage all that from here?
It's true. I was 10 minutes away. It was a second wave, January last year. You all remember it, I'm sure. Crazy time.
Yep.
I was living in Alibag. I knew the movie was coming up, obviously, and I made sure I had like 20 mobile phone connections. I had like 10 phones with me, Vodafone, Wi-Fi, MTNL, everything. Because if I didn't have that, I would have to go back to Bombay, basically. But those, you couldn't even move much during that time. They had locked down the villages, and also quite crazy getting the whole thing set up. But luckily, one connection, I had 4 connections, and one of them always worked, internet connections. It was quite surreal, the whole thing, because I'm sitting in a house in Alibag with my computer and doing these interviews, with mostly Europe and America and a little bit of India. But mostly, no, it was Europe and America at the time. And you're wearing a blazer and shorts. It's like those comedy shows that you see, because you're only looking at the top. You're making sure that the back is kind of okay, because, who knows who's watching it. And we were then in the Oscar race. We were actually, the way the Oscars work is that you have your, with your studio, you decide that you're good enough to be in the race. So they send out like your movie and booklets to all the members of the Academy, and they say for your consideration. So we had, it was all the, best costume, best director, every aspect of it was under consideration. So I used to laugh and tell my wife, I mean, at that time, you couldn't even fly to Delhi. Forget about flying to LA because of the lockdown. But I was like, we may have to go to the Oscars. We may have to go to the Oscars. And she used to get really worried and say, my God, what will I wear? How will we go? And she used to really get worried about it. You remember? And I was like, don't worry. Even if we get nominated, we'll be sitting out here. I'll be wearing shorts and I'll be wearing a blazer, and that's what it will be. It kind of happened like that, basically. But the marketing bit, yes, we had an incredible team with Netflix. Mostly Netflix. There was like 20 people on all the calls. One person from India, because India was one market. It was an important market, but it was one market. It was a global movie. It was very clear from the beginning. Internally with Netflix also, it's very important to set up things carefully. Netflix is a huge company. It's a giant, you know what I mean? It's a behemoth. So setting up the internal expectations from the beginning that this is a global film. This is not an Indian film. A very important point to start with, because if you don't have that, it's all about how they position it, the people they put in it, and how that moves ahead then, because it's not you by yourself. It's like 20 people working with you. The whole marketing team, the people who made the trailer with us. Everything. There's a whole system that runs behind it. The awards team, which is very different from the general marketing team. And Ramin, of course, was an amazing. Him and me together were pushing the whole thing, looking at every aspect of the creatives, the trailer, all the posters, blah blah blah. But yeah, I'm sitting in India. It's kind of strange because you have basically a lot of late night calls. Every night you have a late night call discussing the global thing and discussing India separately, because they're two separate things. In India, you have to look at it in a different way. How do you market in India? Make sure it hits the right things, because an Indian will view it potentially differently than someone else anywhere in the world will. So that's kind of how we divided it basically, yeah.
So Mukul, my last question to you to wrap this up is, you've played many parts through your life. Businessman, entrepreneur, you did Bhavishya, you've performed all over the world, you've been a musician, multimedia artist, and so on. And I think all of us would love to...
All with your support.
Of course.
Susie Wong.
Susie Wong.
Susie Wong was, no, sorry, I'm just joking, but AD has had, a zillion restaurants. He still has a zillion restaurants, but he had one thing which was beautiful on Chowpatty Beach. He had a restaurant in a ship, in a yacht, if you want to call it, a big boat, small ship in the ocean, which you could take a little boat to go to, and you could have dinner and drinks, and beautiful place. And we didn't know each other well then, and he forgot, but I reminded him last week that I did 2 gigs over there on the roof, very experimental gigs, which no one liked at the time, but we had a great time. We have the recordings, and they were incredible. Yeah. So AD has supported me.
So what I think we'd all love to know is, how did you unleash, to put it a little, say, the white tiger in yourself, all these changes, all these, what you've done so successfully, these attempts, you never knew they'd be successful. How did you do that, and what advice for all of us?
They're still not successful, half of them. But I was listening to Deepak's talk before as well about in the trailer. But the trailer was such a beautiful thing. We were thinking of what is a trailer. What is a trailer? A trailer is a version of your movie, a version of anything. I'm giving the movie as a metaphor. A trailer is a version of anything. You're taking a condensed, distilled version of something that you've made, and it's always a question: how much do you put? Do you tell the story? Like in our trailer, we've actually said he actually says that I was made to sign something, blah 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 blah. Is that too much? Is that too very very complex debate? And that happens when you're doing anything in life. How much do you put out and not put out? But the key line which I remembered was create your fate. So we were looking at that nice punchy thing, and create your fate was a beautiful one. And I think for me, what I loved about the book so much and making the movie exactly is that, and the talk that you were talking about is that how do you condition yourself and how can you work towards creating your own fate? I mean, I don't have any answers. I mean, what helps me in life is stories basically, because I think we all are storytellers in our hearts. We all, to your point of what Edie was asking was, because he said, so many things which even I don't remember all these things that I've supposed. If you look at my Wikipedia page, it's very confusing, basically. But when you do, I do business and I do art. So a lot of people ask me, how do you do both, or do you both? Or most people don't know I do business. They just think I do music and films because that's what people know about. Yeah. So when I was younger, when I was trying to do both, it was a very hard process because the way we all are, we don't think. At least when I was younger, being creative was not going to pay any bills. And if you can't pay any bills, you're dead. Simple fact of growing up, if you can't pay bills, you're dead. So how do you do it? But I couldn't help it because when you really want to do something, when you have that passion to do something, it just burns you up inside. How can an artist be a businessman? Something that most of my life I struggled with because I told myself the story at that point that an artist can't be a businessman. Over time you realize, and now with the internet, you can learn so much about people trying to do different things is a very normal thing now. So I think a key thing to answer your thing is what story do you tell yourself every day? Because every day subconsciously you're telling yourself something or the other. You don't realize it, but if you really think, you'll hear it in your head. If you can change that story, that's how you unleash the white tiger. That's how Balram unleashed the white tiger. He changed the story in his head that he was meant to be, working for someone and live that kind of life. He said, I'm greater than this. I'm going to create my fate But the first step was changing the story in your head. So I think that would be my 2 cents.
Thanks, Mukul. That's very inspiring.
Thanks.
Could I throw the floor open for questions? We have a couple of minutes.
Oh, wow. Someone's actually asking. Nice.
Yeah. In fact, I read the book and I've seen the movie, both.
God bless you.
Yeah. That's the question coming to you. You know, I personally find book more darker than the movie. According to me, I have read that book. I'm a non-fiction guy, but one of the very few fictions I have read. Was it intentional just to remain a populist so that ultimately movie becomes a hit or something like that? And the second question could be related. You just mentioned that Ramin, I think, no, the director. The book was dedicated to him, and he had gone through all the drafts. There could be lots of deletions, additions, and all sort of. Was that a problem while making a movie?
Sure. I may forget the second question by the time I finish the first one, but you can ask me again.
I'll remind you.
You know, the first thing that came into my head when you talked about the darkness bit is a book will always be more immersive. That's the nature of books, because in the book you are really in the head of Balram, which no matter how much you try in a movie, you can't do that, because that is how we consume film content versus books. When you read a book, like when I read the book or any great book that we've read, you're in it. You're just immersed in it. So, and in the book you know every little thing that he's thinking. In the movie you have some things about what he's thinking. So I think that's really why you think the book is darker. For people who hadn't read the book, which is 90% of the people who watched the movie, it was pretty dark. And you know, like I met a friend of mine's mother. Again, when we were in the lockdown in Alibag, there was only like 2 couples we could meet, and she was like, "Mukul, please sit down. I want to talk to you about your movie." And I said, "Sure, auntie." And she said, "I'm a good person. I take care of my staff. But when I saw your movie, I couldn't sleep for 3 days." So I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I realized we can do so much more." And I was like, "That's amazing." I mean, so for a lot of people, it was very hardcore because they didn't know what would happen. A lot of people told me, "What a crazy twist at the end." And I said, "What twist?" I really said that. And they said, "The twist." I said, "What twist?" I thought, they missed something. And he's like, "When he kills the person." I was like, "Really? That's a twist?" I thought it was obvious throughout, but yeah. And your second question was? The drafts. No, that wasn't a problem because, he just told me a few times that he had been through drafts, but it was never, he went through those drafts like 10 years ago. So I don't think he had any great memory of them. And anyway, the book was such a strong distillation of all that. So yeah, that wasn't a problem. The real problem was, which is in any adaptation process, how much do you cut from the book? Like my favorite scene from the book is when he goes to his house and they try to get him married in the village, and he gets really upset because he's like, "These guys are gonna put me back into the coop by this marriage thing," and he runs away from them, and he's so upset at his pathetic life that he climbs up this old fort, and the monkeys are looking at him, and he spits to God, at his creator. For me, that was the most beautiful scene in the book, but it's hard to film that. We didn't put that in the movie, for example, and many other things. So yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Muk.
Hi.
So I wanted to know, you started this, I don't know what to call it, this animal, this movement of sorts, a whole amalgamation of all things called Bhavishyavani,
Yes, sir.
right? And it was way ahead of its time. I know at one point and it still continues to be. And could you, I think there's a whole generation out here who doesn't know what Bhavishyavani is.
That's true.
Everyone's like talking about these music festivals and, creative, cultural, cross-cultural, multicultural, so can you explain what the vision of Bhavishyavani was and what it was intended, and it's been successful. It's been more than 22 years now, right?
We all were there at the 20th year anniversary. That was amazing. Oh, sure. Bhavishyavani, which means future sounds, was basically me and some of my friends. I love music. It's my first love, I guess. And I like all kinds of music. I like jazz, classical, rock, everything. I like music is like I think I consider having a very deep knowledge on music. I can't say I do, sorry. Uh, um, but at that time, when we were much younger, we liked electronic dance music, which was a new kind of music that was happening all over the world, taking over the world. We're talking about 24 years ago, like a long time back. It was the sound of the future. It really was the sound of the future. It was also, this is 2022. Let's look back at 1999. I just came back from my first job in Germany in a company called Bertelsmann. I just come back. And in those days, you had no internet, nothing. So the way a lot of people met was in these gigs where you would come to dance to your music, to meet like-minded people, creative people. It was like a place of expression, and you really built communities with that. And when we came back to India, me and some of my friends who lived here also, that didn't exist. What you had was, this is going to be funny, but you had like nightclubs where, no stags were allowed in. All those things, no stags, and then all these funny things. You had all these rules. There was no community thing in a club setting, basically. So it was a mix of wanting to expose a new kind of sound, which was drum and bass in those days, which was a very futuristic type of music. It came out of London in the 90s. It sounds crazy saying it today, but in the 90s it was the sound of the future. In the 90s, modernism was much bigger than it was now. In the 90s, culturally also, music, film and everything, the Matrix was there in the 90s. There was a lot of things in the 90s which made you believe the future would be a better place. That was a key aspect of the 90s. Bhavishyavani was a product of that. We're in 2023, we are hoping that we'll survive the future. Nobody's expecting a better future. We're expecting, Russia doesn't nuke us or whatever it is. We're happy to survive. But that was the 90s. So there was an optimism. So I think it came from that space, that we wanted to start something. So some friends of mine and I learned how to DJ, drum and bass music. And we had 3-4 friends who were graphic designers, artists, those kind of people. And we used to just drive around Bombay, to like seedy places. I liked going to these random places because I didn't want to go to some expensive place because I never wanted the music. If anyone wanted to come and hear the music, they should be allowed. It was a very democratic thing, and that was a key part of the concerts that I went to as well. The democratic aspect was very important. Whether you wore chappals, whether you were shorts, whether you had a girlfriend, anything, wherever you were from, if you wanted to come and hear the music, you would come and hear it. So it was very clear for me, living in South Bombay, that I didn't want to do anything in South Bombay. So we were just driving around randomly anywhere and find like random hotels with like some restaurant thing, and me and my friend would just go to the manager and say, we want to take over your place for a day. Because we would take over the place. People would come and decorate it in a different way. We would take over the door policy because, they have all these rules and we didn't want that. And it turned out to be a movement, like Cyril said. And I'm not part of it anymore directly, but they're all of my friends. And we had our 20th anniversary 3 years ago with a crazy party, and Red Bull sponsored the whole thing. And, we had like this. It was 4 founders, me and 2 other founders, talking for an hour about the whole history, and there's some crazy stories in that whole thing, of course, also, which I won't get into here. So that's what it was, yeah. I'm glad this is truly interactive.
Hi, Mukul. So I have 2 questions for you. I'm although guilty of not watching the film, but I have read the book. So the question is, there is a certain amount of dichotomy when it comes to a global film based on India, especially something which focuses on class struggle and class dynamics, right? So how people perceive Slumdog Millionaire, right? There's of course one side of it that shows the stark reality of what India is, but there's also a challenge of people perceiving India in a particular light. So before producing this movie, did you struggle with that thought? What were the challenges?
Yes, there was the shadow of Slumdog on some level. We were aware of it. Which had a mixed reception in India. A lot of Indians didn't like it. Some Indians call it poverty porn, all that stuff. I personally, when I saw Slumdog, I found his accent a bit strange, but I didn't mind the movie. I didn't have a problem with the poverty porn thing because that's a reality. I had no problem with reality really. But we were definitely very cognizant of the fact that we want to, it's like any, when you want to make a creative product, and we were clear, we wanted to make it big. So we want to make a creative product for, for everyone to see it. Not that Ramin and me were like, let's make a little cool art house movie that we're going to, 50 friends will watch, so it can be as weird as possible. We wanted it to, honestly, it's like this. It's really like the book. It's about, you have to dig down into a core, like create your fate. So a lot of times when we are in the script stage, in the shooting stage, and in the editing stage, and in the trailer stage, this was in our head. That how do we balance it? Some facts will obviously not be, or some parts of the movie, everybody's not going to love it. You're not making something, you're not making Avengers Infinity War. You're making The White Tiger. It is a story about something, about a man breaking through some reality that does exist for people in India. So it's a mix of specificity and universality. The specificity of it is that Balram is, from a place in India, and this is what it is. But what is the core from that you take out? That was actually the most important thing for us to crack, because that kernel, what is it about? For me, it's about freedom, the price that some people have to pay to be free. So once we crack that kernel, create your fate. Anyone knows what create your fate is. Everyone, even the billionaire in the world, in America, Bill Gates or some guy out here has to create their fate. So it's really about finding the truth and staying on the course of that truth, that you can come through it, on the other side. And of course, some people won't be happy, but overall, luckily, in India, it had a very good reception as well. So I'm very happy about that, yeah.
Thank you for answering that. Just one more question.
Sure.
So also you chose Ramin as the director for the movie, for an Indian film, right? So Ramin is the son of an Iranian immigrant based out of, born and brought up in New York, right?
Yes. I would say I chose him and he chose me.
So despite the book being dedicated to him, did you think that he would do justice in capturing something as intricate as the Indian class struggle, which even a lot of Indians don't understand? So what was your thought process behind choosing him as the director rather than an Indian director who would understand or probably understand this class struggle better?
A few things. One was that the book already exists, for example. You have to understand the process to some level, but it's all there in the book. Firstly. Secondly, I was there also. I was going to be his partner. I mean, these are the thoughts that I had. So I would be involved in the whole thing. Thirdly, Ramin has spent a lot of time in Iran as well. So, it's very similar, the whole thing. So he had a very clear understanding of what is the difference. There's no real difference, honestly. It's exactly the same thing in different ways. In fact, now in America, there's a lot of new books. There's a woman, I think her name is Isabel Wilkerson, and she talks about viewing racism as casteism in America. And that's a whole new thing that's, people are talking about as well. So actually it's there everywhere. Again, it's the same thing about how are you tapping into it. In England, you have it, they call it the class system. Are you upper class, lower class? Your accent in 1 second, you hear someone speak and you know that they went to Eton or not in 1 second. You know which school they went to. So actually it's everywhere. In France, they have the same thing. You go to that école, whatever it is. So again, how do you tap into it is what it matters really. Do you find, for me, it was about finding someone who, firstly, honestly, for me, it was about finding someone who had the craft. Ramin is incredible with actors, incredible. All his movies, incredible job with actors. And in this movie, if you're not incredible with actors, there's no movie, I mean. So that was very important for me when I was, thinking of who it is. And he knew the book very well. And of course, the fact that he was Iranian, he understood the whole systems very well. But I would say that a lot of people will understand that. Any empathic human being, wherever they are from, will understand that for sure. So many good movies are made in America and England about the downtrodden and, Dallas Buyers Club just came to mind, whatever, about the people on the margins of society. So that's everywhere, I think. It's just that, are you, empathic enough and sensitive enough? And has that been shown in your art before? Ramin has made, I think all of his movies are about people on the margins of society, about someone who lost their house in the housing crisis. Is one of his first movies that I saw 20 years ago, Man Push Cart, is about an immigrant who's in New York who pushes a cart. He's got a like a hot dog stand or something like that, So his whole life has been movies on those kind of people. So I think that's what's important really. What connection are you bringing? How are you resonating with the core of the story? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But you've done a lot of homework for not watching the movie, so now you have no excuse, boss. He knows everything.
Thanks so much for this chat. It's been really wonderful.
Thank you.
The casting of this film was absolutely spectacular. From Adarsh to Priyanka to Raj Kumar. I'm sure in retrospect it seems like obvious, but I'm sure in the moment people thought, how could you be picking these types of actors? So did you know who the cast was going to be?
Oh, yeah.
And what was some of the fun stories from that process?
I think in every movie, I read about different movies as well. You see the movie and it's obvious when you've seen the movie, but before it, it's always like, oh, I wanted him, but I for 3 years I was chasing that person, but then and no one talks about who they were chasing. The actors sometimes can crack a joke and say that they gave 6 people the script and then they gave it to me. I was the truth is, the hype was pretty solid as we were setting up this thing. It was a big book, Netflix America, so every brown actor in the world wanted to be Balram. Every brown actor in the world wanted to be Balram. And I would say almost every one of them auditioned, for better or worse. Ramin and me both felt very strongly that we should try to get an unknown face because that would really bring out the story much more. It was a risk, but that we really felt that, and Netflix supported us, to their credit, 100%. Because that's a tough decision. You're putting millions of dollars. We could get anyone to play Balram. So it's like, But when we saw others at the auditions, so we auditioned. So we auditioning lots of kids, basically. And we really felt when we saw him that is Balram. He can be Balram. As opposed to, getting a star and he can also be Balram, but, that he is XYZ being Balram. For Rajkumar's role as well, we had a bunch of people. We love Rajkumar. I love Rajkumar from the beginning. When Ramin and me were, when it was greenlit, I sent him Newton and a couple of Rajkumar's movies from the beginning and said, this guy is an amazing actor. You got to watch his stuff. Then I watched his movies as well because I hadn't seen them yet, but I knew he was good. And with Priyanka, she loved the book from before, so she actually got behind us and was like, and I want to make this movie. And we were a bit not sure because, Priyanka is larger than life. But we met her and, she was amazing and she really loved the book. She knew the book very well. And, she charmed us and she was in and it was incredible. And now you see the movie and that it had to be those people basically,
You mentioned the role of your wife in that selection.
That's true. We won't get into that right now, but yes.
One more.
Yes, sir.
And I feel, Mukul, you've done so many different things in your life.
Oh, God.
And it just seems like the White Tiger kind of was a very different space and it has completed you because you've started so many ventures, you've gone on to do so many different things in your life. And all of a sudden you have this movie, well, not all of a sudden, but you worked for it, and you have this big achievement. Does this make you feel a little more complete generally in your life? And does it make you feel, or it's a new beginning for you?
Wow, I didn't realize this was going to be a therapy session. But no, very good questions.
Very good questions.
Does it make me feel more complete or?
A new beginning.
My God. I mean, of course, I can give some very philosophical answer, but I'm trying to think of something more than that. It's very interesting because in a normal circumstance, to have made a movie like this, we were going to open Cannes, we were going to open Cannes Film Festival, we were going to open Toronto Film Festival, we were going to open Venice Film Festival. So we were going to go all over the world wearing bow ties and, doing the whole thing. But instead, I was in Alibag in shorts in a blazer, So we never really had, none of us, had an appreciation situation at all, except, here and there, this and that, but nothing really. So it's like a staggered completion in a way. It's an interesting thing, if you call that kind of completion. I mean, otherwise, no. I mean, the minute the movie finished, as you know, I was doing research on other projects in film and in other areas as well. I do some tech stuff, whatever. So no, it never ends. No, there's no completion. You're just doing different things all the time. Yeah. But I mean, it's nice that people loved the movie and it was appreciated. That's definitely a nice thing. Yeah.
I'm just simplifying the same question. After making a movie and making a global film well appreciated, I'm not going into the commercial part. And what you mentioned, just simplifying the thing on the lighter side, no pun intended. After making this movie, musician Mukul has become White Tiger or not?
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing journey. I think you're always becoming. You never end. All of us are always becoming. Yeah. Maybe one stripe. I got one stripe, but I need more stripes. Sorry? You got it. Oh, that's true. You're right. Damn. That's a good one. You're right. I should have been careful. Thank you.
Great. I think
Thank you so much.
Let's wrap up with that one. But
yes.
Thank you. That was fascinating.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you.
That's
Thank you, everyone.
brilliant, guys.
Thank you, Nishith uncle.
No, I think right from the time concepts were happening, and I think we worked together, and it was wonderful. One would not believe that he would do it, but day one he told me this would go to Oscar.
That's true. Nishith uncle was there like in the beginning.
My memory is very random. Most of the time it crashes, but this one always stuck in my head. He may not remember, but I remember day one. It was just a book. Right. Even the purchase of the book and the script and those days, there was nothing, right? And I think it was wonderful to work together and to see you growing up.
Thank you.
A real matter of pride for me as well, and personally for all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've done a wonderful job, and you also promised me that you will teach us something, And we were discussing that during this retreat or the next one or something like that. And he's a versatile person. He's a musician, he's a singer, he's everything. I don't know. White Tiger is White Tiger, It's unusual. So he's very unusual. But he has friend also in White Tiger. But the thing is that you said you will teach us something, you'll tell us something. So tell me what all we can do together and what you can help us
sure.
learn.
Anything you want, uncle.
We are lawyers, but we also think a little beyond law. Most people think lawyers are sharks, but I think hopefully we are not that.
No,
you're
not. You're very you're
So, and Eddie, you've been wonderful interviewing, but just tell me.
Uncle I think what uncle is saying is that he had asked me if I could teach people to make music on another day or something, and I said that's going to be very complicated. But sure, in your next thing, I don't anything. I mean, I don't know what I can teach. I mean,
you're going to take some class, right?
I'll take a class.
You told me that.
I'll take a class. Okay, like that. I mean, what can I teach? I don't know.
You tell storytelling. You
storytelling.
Tell
sure,
singing,
I can
you
teach
music.
I can teach next time. I'll teach storytelling. Yes, sure, I can do that. Yeah.
I think.
Huh? That yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Wasn't this great? Little louder. Little louder. Thank you, Mukul. Thank you, Eddie. I think you made a good jodi. Isn't it? So, welcome and welcome again. Let's do more exciting things. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Thank you.